On.
You start with the announcements, Caitlin.
I think John's going to take care of them.
Oh, John, go for it.
I can take care of them. So yeah, welcome everybody to this meeting as our resume workshop. We have a few announcements to start off. First is some news about the FTC Summit. Recently, we got news that there's a new registration option available where you can attend the summit for just one day instead of the whole conference. And because of this, the price for that option is reduced and falls under the threshold for STA funding, actually. So if you just attend for one day, you're eligible for full funding attending the summit through that option. So basically, you can attend for free, which we've been trying to pursue. If you're interested in this option, we're going to be reopening the interest form for the summit over spring break. You can still fill it out during the week, put in your information there, do all that. And then by the end of the break, we'll be tallying out all our interested members and seeing who'd like to attend again. So yeah, just one more time, over the spring break, we're going to have the interest form open and you can feel free to put your name, your info. And if you'd like to pursue one-day registration, which might be free, that'll be an option. Then besides that, we have our membership survey and a raffle going on until the 19th. So we're just looking for feedback and we love to hear all of your thoughts, anybody who's a member and who's joined us before. So feel free to fill out our membership survey. We have links on our social media and on the slides we'll be distributing. Just put your thoughts about the club, any feedback about events that we've had, so on and so forth. And if you participate by the 19th, you get entered into a raffle to win a free license of Snagit. So that's a pretty good value just for participating in the survey. And adjacent to the survey as well, if you're interested in leadership, in the fall, we'll be looking for some new leaders, some new leadership opportunities and just ways that you can help out the club. Those are also denoted on the survey. There's a page where you can check off if you like a specific position or if you're just interested in general. A lot of options there. So if you'd like to pursue leadership in the fall, feel free to check out the survey or just message us and we'll give you some more info. And finally, our next GBM is our last GBM of the semester on the 23rd. That's going to be on a job interview workshop led by Claire, our historian. It's going to be a great time, our last main meeting. There will be one more casual one right after that, before we head out into the summer, but you want to check that one out next, or 2 Fridays from now, April 23rd. And that's about it for our announcements. So I'll pass it over to both of you, Angela and Becky.
Thank you so much, John. So we are rolling right into our resume workshop. Welcome to the resume workshop for the future technical communicators. I'm one of your presenters. I'm Angela Kafka, and the other presenter is Rebecca Navas. So let's get started. So parts of a resume. These are some of the basic parts of a resume that we recommend having, starting with your name, contact info, which is your number and email, an objective statement, which personally for me is a bit optional. Your objective statement is best if you need to provide some context for your resume, I would say. It does help, maybe if you don't have that typical chronological resume, there's 4 resumes: chronological, academic, functional, and combination. We'll be focusing on 2 of them, but if you don't have that standard chronological resume, you want to give some context to your resume, an objective statement is great. If you want to give context to yourself as a candidate, an objective statement is great. But if you don't have any room for that, or you feel that your experience says it for itself, go ahead and feel free to admit that. I'll give that one kind of an optional place. Education is not optional. It's very important that you put your education, especially if you're in college. If you are in college, don't put your high school. Employers are going to assume that you've graduated high school in some way, so don't worry about that. Just go ahead and only put your college, include your college GPA. To be transparent, I don't have my college GPA on mine. I just wasn't able to fit it, but I think it's a good idea to put it on your resume, especially if you do an academic resume, which we'll get to later. You want to list honors if applicable, so that looks like putting your dean's list, or if you were on the president's honor roll, great thing to include. You also want to include experience. That's any jobs, internships, or volunteer work you have that pertains to the position. And the fact that it pertains to the position is important. Don't just put every single thing you've ever done. That's actually more for a living resume, which is just something for yourself so that you can pick up those pieces of experience and plug them into individual resumes that you craft for certain positions. But for that individual resume, you want to submit it to a very specific position. Be strategic about the experience you include. Don't put every single thing you've done. Really focus on putting the experience that is relevant to the position. And you want to format that experience in reverse chronological order. So the first position that you put should be your most recent, and then cascading down to your least recent. We recommend you have a skills section, but you want to avoid putting soft skills. So soft skills are like leadership or organizational skills. If you want to showcase those soft skills, showcase them in your experience. If you have been in leadership positions, connect it to your experience. Say, led this team of this many people. That will showcase your leadership skills without just saying you have them. So when you do have a skills section, you want to kind of keep it to programs that you're familiar with, credentials that you hold, platforms that you've engaged with, things like that. More hard skills, avoid the soft skills. And then the last section we recommend is an awards section. This can have scholarships, including Bright Futures. I have my Bright Futures on there, so go ahead and put that if you have it, and any other scholarships. Grants, you are definitely know if you've written a grant, you will definitely know if you've received it. So if you are a grant recipient, put that in your awards section. And then publications, some people aren't sure what that means. If I have a publication, but it's not, a research publication, should I include it? Yes. Any publication you have that was published by a different entity, it wasn't you, that you're proud of, definitely put it on your resume. This can include magazines, literary journals, scientific journals and research journals. Some of those publications carry more impact because of the vetting process that goes into publishing that work, but include them all. They're all important and they're all impressive. So that was a lot. So what are the resume must-haves? What has to be on your resume? Well, very clearly, name and contact information have to be on your resume. We put at least your email because as we were creating this presentation, we started thinking, well, how many places is our resume going to end up? And for a lot of us, we have portfolios, and our resume will be on those portfolios and their websites, and anyone can access those websites. So if you're more of a private person, you don't want to have your location or your number on the internet, go ahead and just have your email, but you have to have some form of contact so that they being the employers can reach out to you and offer you the position. If they can't reach out to you, they're not going to go out of their way to try to find you. Education, again, super important. You're a college student, that is very impressive. You want to showcase that. Always put your education and major, minors, anything like that really helps them get a better picture of who you are as a candidate and what specialties and skills you have. Relevant experience, very important as well. Volunteer work, internships, or coursework, which we'll get into in a second. But the different types of resumes have different types of relevant experience you can showcase. You want to put out any credentials you hold. So if you took a class and you received a certificate or something like that, or if you've passed any certain courses and I forget what they're called, seminars and things like that, go ahead and put those on too. They're very impressive and important, and you spent time doing that, so you definitely have a right to show that off. And then you also want to include keywords from the job description. We'll explain why this is really important later, but just to show that you are a relevant candidate, always kind of take that information from the job description, maybe not verbatim, but definitely those keywords, and sprinkle them throughout your resume and cover letter, but we're not discussing cover letters today. The two resumes we will be discussing are chronological resumes and academic resumes. Chronological resumes are the most common resume format, and that experience is listed in, again, reverse chronological order. So first experience bullet is your most recent experience. This type of resume is best for applicants with relevant experience, jobs, internships, etc. I personally have a chronological resume because I have a lot of experience in the field that I'm trying to get into, but I used to have an academic resume because I was lacking on that experience and wanted to break into that field. So an academic resume is best for recent graduates with little experience or those gaining an education in a new field. So if you are going back to school for you want to break into a new field, you don't want to focus on the past field that you were in or your past education, an academic resume is great. Also, if you just graduated and you didn't have a chance to get those jobs and internships, that's totally fine, but the academic resume might be best for you. So it showcases education as experience, and it includes a relevant or related courses section. And ideally, your courses will be categorized by learned concepts. So if you did a lot of research or you took a lot of research classes, that would be a great category, or technical writing if you're a technical communications major like us. So this is an example of a chronological resume. This is one of my past resumes. I changed some of the font to make it more readable for everyone. But as you can see, I have my name at the top, my number, email, and portfolio link would be down there. I do want to mention that I don't have my location on this resume or my other resume, specifically because I was applying to positions that are not in Florida, are outside of the state. And I didn't want the fact that I live in Florida to be, confusing for them, or to limit my potential to get the job. So I did omit that. Typically, when you do apply, especially through big companies, they'll ask for your address anyways through the application process. But I went ahead and omitted it just because I didn't want to be disqualified or pushed aside as an applicant. Think about that. If you're applying out of state, consider omitting your location, but at the same time, there are also usually spots in the application to specify you are willing to relocate. So it's not a huge deal, but I decided to omit it from this one. I go into my education, I say the school I'm from, my degree. I'm a double major, so I specify that, and then I put my graduation date. That is really important. When people are looking at hiring you for usually internships, they'll be looking at your resume and they'll say, okay, this person graduates in 2 years from now. That means that I probably won't be able to hire them in the near future. They're just going to be on for this internship season. And if you are graduating soon, the recruiter might think, okay, I could maybe hire them, after, if they do a really good job at their internship, I can hire them after they'll be available. So I want to be hired after I graduate, which is in the near future. So I always put my graduation date just so they know this is when I'll be available to be a full-time employee. Going into experience, again, you have that reverse chronological order, starting with that first description being the most recent and cascading down from there. I have my achievements and awards section where a lot of things are kind of under that umbrella. I have a publication, I have a presentation, I have my UCF Dean's List, and I have the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. So I just kind of put that all under there, kind of labeling publication and presentation to better orient that. If you don't have a whole lot of categorical achievements and awards, this might be best to kind of just put them under this umbrella, but you'll see in a later resume example how you can also categorize them so they're a little easier to read and process for the employer. Lastly, I have my skills at the bottom. These are all programs, these are all platforms that I'm familiar with, no soft skills. All my soft skills are presented in my experience through my descriptions. I will say that this resume is very technical. There's no color invoked, there are minimal graphics. This is a fine resume for any technical positions. I will show you later, again, there's a more design heavy resume. We can get into that. This is a very technical chronological resume, which is perfectly fine for most, if not all, positions. All right, this is an academic resume. As you can see, that objective statement is up at the top. When I crafted this resume with my friend, her goal was to obtain an internship and gain valuable experience working in a field. She lists her interests and then goes into what she aspires to get out of her future educational achievements, being a master's degree. So that's a pretty holistic objective statement, concise too. I would say that's a pretty good one. You could, maybe write a little bit more, 3 to 4 sentences is my recommendation, but I would say the more concise, the better. There is no ambiguity in her objective statement. You completely understand why she has made her resume, why she's obtaining these jobs or aspiring to obtain these jobs, and then what she hopes to do in the near future. In the education section, she immediately puts her GPA. That's always smart to put on an academic resume. If you're highlighting your academic work, you want to put that GPA. She puts her major, when she graduated, the college she graduated from, and also her minor for her honors and achievements. That was that Dean's List, and then related courses. So this is what I meant by the categorizing by learned concepts. So she learned about general psychology, child psychology, and research, and then she broke it down between the classes that best represent those categories. And she put the class name and the course code, and then explained what she got out of the course. So that's a really good way to represent your knowledge and education as your experience, and you still want to be sticking with those action verbs. We'll get into style and content tips later, but that general rule of thumb never really goes away. always start off with an action verb. She does have her experience at the bottom. When we were crafting it, we decided to keep that experience, even though it's a bit outdated. We made this in 2021. That experience was in 2017, but it does showcase that she was a manager. That's admin work, that is customer service work. So we thought that might be a good thing to include. As you can see, she did omit a skill section. So there are, from that must-haves page, those should always be there, but you can be strategic about what you include. If you didn't want to include any experience because you don't have any that you want to showcase, she could have replaced that experience section with her skills section. But you want to constantly be thinking, okay, what is the best way for me to present myself right now? What is the most advantageous thing? And for her, that was her experience over her skills. Lastly, design resume. This is my current resume. Again, these last couple of resumes have been pretty black, white, and gray. When it comes to a design resume, you can use color. You can even use color in more technical resumes. Just make sure that you're using it strategically, because when you start invoking things like color and columns and graphics and things like that, you're showcasing your design capacity, your design knowledge. And if you do it incorrectly, you're showcasing that you don't have a great knowledge of design principles. So always make sure you're kind of checking and making sure that you're adhering to design principles, making it the best presentation it can, or presenting it the best it can. But, don't be afraid to use color. Just make sure you're using it correctly. And don't use any colors that contrast very poorly, like yellow or aqua or any real pastel-y light colors. So don't contrast well on white. So just make sure you're applying those principles again in a good way that shows your skills. Looking at this design resume, I went a little bit differently with the columns. The other two had been left aligned and just a cascade of different sections. These now have columns, and I've sort of given the umbrella columns a better, a specific type of typography. So my name has that specific sans serif typography, and then going in, we have more of a design font for my subtitle, and then my different, again, umbrella terms like experience, skills, education, and awards. This is what I meant by you can sort of categorize your awards. From that first resume to this one, I now have 2 publications and 2 presentations, so it kind of worked out perfectly, and I was able to categorize publications, presentations, and then scholarships. I just happen to have 2 for each. That worked out really well for me. But if you do have a little bit more than just some, here and there's, you want to include them all. And so maybe categorizing them might be best for you. Again, reverse chronological order. My first position is the one I'm currently holding. And then my later ones are ones that I have done. I actually am holding all 3 of these positions presently. So the last one is my past position that is not currently present. So if you do have multiple present positions, you just want to start with the one that's most advantageous. So I created this resume with the understanding that I would be applying to editorial positions. So I put that assistant editor role as the first one, second one being the communications coordinator role, and then the last one being a project that I was the editor-in-chief for. They also chronologically make sense. I started my Florida Review position, the most recent. Communications coordinator was second most recent, and then anthology was the least most recent. So I did employ some strategy, but it also happens to adhere to that reverse chronological order. My skills, again, are all platforms or softwares, no soft skills. All the soft skills are in experience. Education is there. I don't have my GPA. As you can see, there wasn't enough room to fit it, but I do have both of my majors, my certificate, and my graduation date. Going back to the award section, I presented my publications in MLA. Whatever you feel is best for you. MLA is pretty standard, especially for the field that I want to get into. So I recommend MLA, but feel free to present it however you'd like. Just make sure you get all the information down and that they can access the publication, especially if it's online. Including that link there allows them to simply copy and paste it into a browser and be able to check out your publication. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Becky for style and content tips.
Hello guys, that would be me. My name is Rebecca Navas, and I'm just going to talk about some stylistic choices you should be considering when you're writing and editing your resume. So first things first, your resume should only be 1 page. So of course that is debatable. I've heard other people say 2 pages is okay, but just to be safe, I would definitely go with 1 page because, sometimes hiring managers will, have a really short attention span, and there's only so much they could read in 1 minute because that's how much time they might dedicate to looking at your resume. And of course, we're also going to be writing short, clear phrases. We're going to try to maximize space. You're going to include an objective statement only if you have space for it, really, or if you're doing an academic resume and don't have a lot to make up for when it comes to experience. There's going to be descriptions, but with those descriptions, you want to use action verbs. So you can use words like assisted, practiced, organized, managed, gained the knowledge of, and then you're just going to go ahead and describe it, but be straight to the point. You don't really want to rely on using adjectives. We're definitely going to be relying on verbs. Anything with adjectives, really, you can represent by referring to metrics. So in that example, right on the right side here, it says, edited up to 15 articles on a weekly basis. If there's some kind of estimation you can give with how much work you're doing in a certain amount of time, definitely refer to that so that people will get a better idea of your work ethic and how much work you can get done in a certain amount of time. But one thing I did skip over, you're gonna want to bold and italicize subjects of importance, not even specifically that. You can even underline or capitalize things. You're just gonna want to establish some sort of hierarchy of information in your resume, kind of like writing out an outline. So anything that's bolded could be maybe the job positions you have held. Just make sure to keep it consistent. All of the job positions you've had in your work history, bold them. And if you want to go ahead and italicize and bold the position you held, or actually the company, you're going to have to keep that consistent and make sure it's separated so that hiring managers who skim through resumes know what to look at. And, the eye will just naturally be fixated on something depending on how it's represented on a sheet of paper. And as most people know, use a readable font. You want to make sure that your work is accessible. Some people, struggle with vision. So I would go for at least 11 point, but that might be small for some people. So if you can shoot for 12 point, definitely shoot for 12 point. And that's about it. Just make sure that everything is consistent. Another important thing that everyone should know about is that you have to make your resume ATS friendly. So you're going to want to borrow language from the official job listing, as Angela mentioned earlier. So from myperfectresume.com, I pulled this quote. It says, in today's competitive hiring climate, many companies use resume screening to weed out applicants that may not be a great match for a job. Applicant tracking systems are software programs that scan resume content and use an algorithm to search for keywords. So yes, the ATS filter will search for specific keywords relating to your qualifications and work experience. So if your resume is actually in really good shape, but doesn't use the type of language they're looking for, it might just be thrown away in the trash bin. And of course, you don't want that to happen. So I know with most of us being English majors, we're super worried about plagiarizing, but here you can borrow language as long as you're not writing the exact same thing. You're replacing it with what makes it unique and personal to your experience, then that is completely fine. Because if anything, hiring managers who are reading through that, they're going to be most familiar with what the job application says, and they're like, hey, that sounds like what we need, because that's exactly what they wrote. So just go ahead and use the same language so that it can benefit you in the long run. And here are some useful links with useful resources for all of you guys to look at. Angela and I ourselves actually use these links to put this PowerPoint together. So if there's anything specific you guys want to look into or just need some advice or any tips from any really credible sources, you can go ahead and click any of these. Check them out. And we just want to thank you really for tuning into our presentation. Of course, Angela had a lot of helpful advice to hand over to us. And of course, we want to thank John and Caitlin for helping us organize this too. Anything for you guys to add?
I am perfect here. If you guys have any questions or want to send us your specific resumes, you can go ahead and email us at ucf.ftc@gmail.com. You can also check out our social media to see more of some of the events we're doing. But much.
Awesome.